What is up, guys? Today I am going to be talking about gain staging. It's something that's really important when it comes down to your overall mix and getting a good clean master. It's definitely something that once I learned it, it significantly impacted my ability to make music, my ability to get to that volume that you want, that loudness that you want, that all of your favorite songs have. So really what I'm going to go through today is just breaking down each element of the track, where it should really sit volume-wise, where it should peak, and then where the overall track should peak as a mix, as an unmastered mix. I've also got a master here from Ozone, so we can put that master on afterwards too and see how clean it sounds and how loud it sounds overall. So let's just go ahead and take a look here. This is a track that I finished up recently, last week, and so we can just take a peek and go through each element and where it's sitting. I'll kind of give you my general rule of thumb when I start a track, where it should sit. So if I'm pulling in a kick drum, starting a new track, generally I like to start around -8 dB. So I pull the volume meter down to -8 dB, and then call it a day. Then as I build in my other elements, maybe as I EQ the kick drum, I'll make subtle adjustments after that. But you know, as you can see here, it's sitting at -10.4, but dependent on what I have on the channel, you know, it can get louder if I like EQ it and give boost to it and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the kick drum. So it's sitting at -7.8 as you saw. That's pretty solid. It's definitely getting a little EQ boost here. So that's pretty good on the kick. We can take a look at the bass here. I would say the kick and the bass are the two most important elements of the track to get right. They're gonna screw up your mix and master at the end if you don't get them right. So definitely keep in mind the -8 on the kick, and then when it comes to the bass, I usually aim for -12. In general, if the bass falls anywhere behind the kick, it's probably okay, but I like to generally aim for, you know, -12. So brought it here -14.8, but I do think I have a bit of EQing and whatnot on it, so we'll listen to the overall and see where it hits. Okay, so -10.5. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's move on a little bit more. I would say as you get to the other elements, away from the low end, it becomes a little more nuanced. You know, it can change a bit. Samples are typically a lot like, you know, sometimes you might pull in a FX sample that sounds super low, and then you really have to adjust the volume. But yeah, so it can vary a bit more when it comes to the other elements, but there are still generally rules of thumb. If I'm pulling in hi-hats, I like to aim for like usually like -14, -15, -16, and then it just depends on how many I layer together, you know, to where I'm gonna change that volume. So if we look here, we got like -17.6. I'm just kind of gonna gloss through these first and just get a general idea. This is -3, but I would also like argue, you know, if you look at the waveform, there's not much there. So I'm, you know, obviously gonna have to bring that one up a bit. If we look at it, it's probably peaking at like -10 or 12 or something like that. Look at these, -7, -15, -9. Yeah, so like generally these are gonna fall, I would say, behind the kick and the bass as individual tracks. That's what I would aim for. It's also important to, you know, look at where the buses are gonna peak and stuff like that. So let's have a little bit of a closer look at where these buses are peaking. And again, there's no really completely right or wrong. And it's like, I think the kick and bass, you know, you can kind of be more strict on that, but once it comes to these elements, you're a little bit more loose. It's really just a guideline, but we'll still take a look at them anyways. Okay, so that was -8.6 on the drum loop bus. Let's take a look at the perks. negative 15.9. Okay, pretty good. Let's move onward. We'll take a look at the vocal at kind of the peak loudness of the track, see where this sits. Let's look at the vocal bus. Negative 7.6. It's fine. Again, you're just kind of vaguely looking at this, but if that was sitting around negative like 1 or 2, I'd probably be a little bit concerned, but overall it's still generally far enough back that it's probably going to be in the clear. We can look at some more. Let's just check these out. Guitar sample here. Okay, so those are a couple of the more melodic elements of the track. Yeah, those generally sit again behind the kick and bass. Now, if we look at FX, if you look at charts online, typically FX will fall even further back than all of those elements. So traditionally, those are going to sit negative 20, negative 25, anywhere from there to negative 30, just dependent, on the sample, what you're looking for. But we can go ahead and look at some of this in atmosphere included in the FX. We'll just take a look at where these are peaking. Yeah, negative like 47, so super low. But yeah, I think it's just good to kind of go through all of this because there's no, when you're starting out, I think people, you might overthink things and be like, well, why isn't this volume as high as that volume and all of that. And I would say this is generally a good way to look at it. You can look up charts online, but yeah, like usually it goes kick is going to be the loudest, followed by the bass. Then you have a lot of your other melodic elements, maybe your vocals, and then behind all of that will be FX and stuff like that. Your drums is going to sit somewhere between, I would say, like around the bass and then the melodic elements as well. But yeah, so we've looked at most of the elements here. Maybe we should look at the overall track and let's give a listen to that and see where the overall track is peaking. That means we're going to be looking at this channel right here. Okay, negative 2.5. So generally the guidelines are, I would say, is aim between negative 6 negative 3 dB on your final mix of your unmastered track. If you look online at what mastering engineers will ask you for, if you've ever sent a mix to a mastering engineer, they'll generally say leave negative 3 dB of headroom, leave negative 4 dB of headroom. This is what they're talking about. So just try and really get your mix to, I would say behind negative 3. That's an ideal thing to aim for. Clearly, I'm exceeding it a little bit here, but generally the track's still, it's still working fine. So I'm not really that worried about it. But at the end of the day, generally just good guidelines to have. Now we can take a look at the Ozone Master here and just kind of see how that sounds. I'll play it without the Ozone Master first and then I'll play it with it. And rather than listening to the volume, because obviously it's going to be louder, just listen to the quality and see if it changes. Because that's where you're going to notice the issue is if you throw on a master and then you have distortion or some element or something like that, it's causing unwanted elements of the track, then again, that's it could be due to gain staging. There's obviously a lot of other things involved too that could be causing the problem, but gain staging is one thing that's definitely going to help you. So let's give it another listen. Okay, yeah, so definitely a lot louder. I wouldn't say I'm sacrificing quality. I think it sounds pretty similar. We can kind of look a little bit closer at the master I have and what it's doing. So obviously there's some EQing involved here, taking out some low end, a little bit of dynamic EQ, and then this is, I think, doing just various compression and other things to it. So if you don't have your own way of kind of mastering your own music, I would suggest Ozone here. It's really good. This is the standard version, but what you can do is use this little mastering assistant. So again, if I'm in the -6, -3 dB range, then I'll go here, go to my master assistant, load up a reference track that I really like, then click next, and I'll play it, and then it's going to adjust everything as needed to get to the level that you're looking for. So really nice and easy, quick way to do a master. You know, I still send my tracks out to mastering engineers, so I'll kind of do two things. I'll have that final unmastered between -3 and -6, and then I will basically do this Ozone pre-master, and then I'll use that as my demos. So I'll send that out to a bunch of different labels, a bunch of different artists, because it's good enough to where, you know, they can kind of get an idea if the track's for them or not. You're not at a level of quality where, you know, they're gonna not play it. So yeah, I do that first, send that out, and then ultimately when I get it signed to a label, or when I'm like finally there at that point, I'm sending it to the mastering engineer, and then he's going to you know, polish it up, make it sound perfect, so it sounds good on, you know, your phone, in the club, on your speakers. It's just gonna sound good everywhere. You know, that's something that I don't have the ears for that, but I have good enough ears where I can use an Ozone master like this, send it out, and it's generally good enough. But again, I'd still trust the mastering engineer to kind of take it that final like 5%. So yeah, anyways, overall, just to kind of review generally everything here, you know, kick, -8, bass, -12, all of your melodic elements, vocals, hi-hats, drum elements, percussion, stuff like that's going to fall a little bit behind that in the middle, and then below all of that, FX and atmosphere. Yeah, anyways, if you guys have any questions, you can ask them in the comment section below. I hope this is helpful. Gain staging was hugely helpful to me. It was super easy. Once I knew how to do it, it was saving me a lot of time. Yeah, hope you guys learned something from this. Cheers.